Okay, so imagine this. You finally forgive the people who sold you into slavery. But then, you realize they think your forgiveness was just an act. That's the kind of tense, emotional powder keg we're about to open up in the final chapter of Genesis. It's a story that all comes down to one last, crucial test of forgiveness.
And believe it or not, everything we're diving into today comes from this single page of text. Right here is where a whole lifetime of betrayal and reconciliation comes to a head just moments after the death of the family patriarch, Jacob.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to follow the story through 5 key moments. It all starts with a son's duty to his father, which then blows up into a funeral fit for royalty. But then that public show gives way to some really private fear, leading to this huge confrontation about good and evil. And it all wraps up with a final legacy, a promise that's meant to be carried on for generations.
All right, so the story kicks off the very second Jacob, who you might also know as Israel, breathes his last. And in that instant, all eyes turn to his son Joseph. Remember, this is the second most powerful man in Egypt, and he's now got this sacred duty that's about to set this entire chain of events in motion.
You know, Joseph's first move here is really telling. It's not political, it's deeply personal. After he grieves for his dad, he tells the Egyptian physicians to preserve the body. Now sure, embracing this local custom shows how much he's a part of this world, but this isn't about fitting in. This is about keeping a promise he made a long, long time ago.
And there it is. This is the heart of it all. This wasn't just a dying wish. It was a sworn oath. Jacob made Joseph promise, swear to him, that he wouldn't be buried in Egypt, the land where they had all this power. No, he had to be taken back to Canaan, the land that was their true home, their identity. This one promise is the engine that drives everything that's about to happen.
But you know, keeping a promise like this isn't so simple. It actually requires getting permission from the most powerful man on the planet at the time. So Joseph has to go to Pharaoh and ask for leave. And what happens next? Well, it turns this private family duty into a massive public spectacle. Just try to get your head around the scale of this. The entire nation of Egypt officially mourns Jacob for 70 days. This was not your typical funeral. This was an honor usually reserved for a pharaoh, not a foreign shepherd. It's just a stunning sign of how much respect Pharaoh had for Joseph and his family.
And this timeline really gives us a sense of how deliberate and extended this whole process was. I mean, the embalming alone took 40 days. Then came another 30 days of national mourning, all before they could even start the long journey to Canaan.
And the journey itself? Wow, this was no family road trip. This was a full-blown state procession. We're talking Pharaoh's own servants, elders from the court, a military escort with chariots and horsemen, the whole shebang. The text isn't kidding when it calls it a very great company. This was a major political statement, seen on a national scale.
Okay, so the funeral's over, and they're all back in Egypt. And that's when the mood completely shifts. All of that public ceremony just evaporates, and it's replaced by private terror. For Joseph's brothers, their father's death has removed this protective shield, and a really old wound starts to reopen.
And this is the one question that is just eating them alive. For all these years, they've been wondering, was Joseph's kindness for real? Or was it all just an act for their dad? Now that Jacob is gone, all their guilt comes flooding back, and they are terrified. They're pretty much convinced that the day of reckoning has finally come. So they panic and they come up with a plan. They're so scared, they don't even go to Joseph in person. Instead, they send a messenger, and they try to use their dead father's authority. They claim Jacob's last command was for Joseph to forgive their trespass and their sin. It's a desperate, last-ditch effort for sure.
And this moment right here, it shows you the huge gap between their fear and Joseph's reality. They are bracing themselves for pure hatred, for revenge that's been years in the making. But instead, Joseph just weeps. And you have to wonder why, right? Maybe it's the pain of realizing that after all these years, after everything he's done for them, they still don't get it. They still don't trust that his forgiveness was real.
So this brings us to the climax of the entire saga. The brothers, they completely misread his tears. They fall down in front of him, literally offering to be his slaves. But Joseph's response just shatters all their expectations and completely reframes their entire shared history. And what he says next is one of the most powerful lines in the entire book. See, he doesn't ignore what they did. He looks right at them and he acknowledges it. You intended to harm me. But then he hits them with this incredible twist. But God intended it for good, and points to the fact that their actions led to him saving countless people from the famine.
He sees a bigger purpose, a divine plan, working through their human evil.
And his response isn't just about words, it's about action. First, he tells them flat out, fear not. Then he humbly steps back from being their judge, asking them, am I in the place of God? And finally, he goes way beyond just forgiveness and makes a new promise that he will continue to provide for them and for their children. He comforts them, he speaks kindly to them, the reconciliation is absolutely complete.
So, with that huge, decades-long conflict finally put to rest, the story starts moving toward its end, and we see how that central theme of a binding promise keeps going, echoing into the next generation.
After that whole confrontation, Joseph lives a long, full life there in Egypt. He gets to see his family absolutely flourish for generations, even living to see his own great-grandchildren. It's really a picture of peace and fulfillment.
And you know, it's amazing how things come full circle. Just like the story began with an oath from a father to his son, it's going to end with an oath from a father to his own children, this solemn, binding promise that's meant to echo through time. So here he is on his deathbed, and the cycle is complete. Just like his father, Joseph's last wish isn't to stay in Egypt, the land where he had all this power and glory. Instead, he makes his descendants swear an oath. Whenever God eventually leads them back home to Canaan, they have to carry his bones with them. It is the ultimate act of faith in a future that he will never get to see for himself.
So, at the end of the day, this ancient story of betrayal and forgiveness, it doesn't really end with a neat conclusion. It ends with a promise that points toward the future. It's a legacy of faith, passed down from one generation to the next, all through a single solemn oath. And it leaves us with a question to think about in our own lives. What promises are we making today that are worth keeping for generations?